The church bells tolled like a death knell, each chime sinking deeper into my chest. I stood at the altar, my suit too tight, my heart pounding louder than the organ's mournful hymn. Everyone was staring, hundreds of eyes boring into me, waiting for a groom who wasn't coming. Elliot had run. My fiancé, the man I'd loved for 3 years, vanished hours before our wedding, leaving only a crumpled note. I can't do this. I'm sorry. The words burned in my mind, sharper than the whispers rippling through the pews. I was Ethan Harper, the guy who had it all, steady job, charming smile, a life planned out with a man I thought I'd grow old with. Now, I was the fool left standing alone, abandoned in a small-town church in upstate New York, where everyone knew everyone's secrets. The murmurs grew louder, a mix of pity and judgment. My mother's face, pale and tight-lipped, screamed disappointment from the front row. Elliot's parents, the prestigious Warrens, looked ready to combust. Their eldest son, the golden boy, had humiliated them. And me, I was collateral damage. Then came the voice that shattered the chaos. "We can fix this, Mrs. Warren said, her tone sharp enough to cut glass. She stood, her designer dress pristine despite the emotional wreckage around her. "The wedding will go on." I blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" Her eyes, cold and calculating, flicked to the side of the altar. There, half hidden in the shadows, stood Caleb Warren, Elliot's younger brother. He was 22, barely out of college, with messy brown hair and eyes that always seemed to carry a quiet storm. He'd been my friend once, back when Elliot and I were just starting out. But we drifted apart, his shy smiles replaced by a guarded distance I never understood. "Caleb will take Elliot's place, Mrs. Warren declared, as if it were the most logical solution in the world. The crowd gasped. My heart stopped. Caleb's face went white, his hands clenching at his sides. "Mom, you can't," he started, but his father's glare silenced him. "This family will not be a laughingstock, Mr. Warren hissed. "The invitations are sent. The guests are here. You'll marry Ethan. Caleb. Now." I wanted to scream, to run like Elliot had, but my feet were glued to the floor. Caleb's eyes met mine, wide with panic. Yet something else flickered there, something raw, unspoken. I didn't know what it meant, but it sent a shiver down my spine. The priest, flustered but obedient, cleared his throat. "Shall we continue?" And so, in a haze of disbelief, I found myself standing face to face with Caleb, the boy who'd once laughed at my terrible jokes, now forced to be my husband. The vows felt like a script I hadn't rehearsed, each word heavy with the weight of a lie. Caleb's voice trembled as he said, "I do." And I echoed him, my throat tight. The rings, meant for Elliot, slipped onto our fingers, cold and unfamiliar. When the priest said, "You may kiss," the room held its breath. Caleb hesitated, his breath catching. Then, almost defiantly, he leaned in. His lips brushed mine, soft and fleeting, but it was enough to spark something I couldn't name, a jolt that made my heart stutter. The crowd clapped, oblivious to the turmoil beneath the surface. That night, at the reception, I sat beside Caleb, the air between us thick with tension. The guests toasted to our happy union, unaware of the truth. Caleb barely spoke, his fingers twisting the napkin in his lap. I wanted to ask him what he was thinking, why he hadn't fought harder against this. But every time I opened my mouth, the words died. As the band played a slow song, Caleb stood abruptly. "Dance with me," he said. Not a request, but a necessity. As if moving would keep us from drowning in the absurdity of it all. I followed him to the dance floor, my hand finding his. His grip was firm, but his eyes avoided mine. "Why did you agree to this?" I whispered as we swayed. The music a fragile shield against the world. He swallowed, his jaw tight. "Because they would have destroyed you, Ethan. If this wedding fell apart, they'd blame you. I couldn't let that happen." His words hit like a punch. I'd always seen Caleb as the quiet one, the shadow to Elliot's spotlight. But there was a fierceness in him now, a protectiveness I hadn't expected. I didn't know what to say, so I just held him closer, our bodies moving in sync despite the chaos in our hearts. The night blurred into a series of forced smiles and champagne toasts. By the time we stumbled into the hotel suite, our honeymoon suite, courtesy of the Warrens, I was exhausted, emotionally and physically. Caleb stood by the window, staring out at the city lights, his silhouette sharp against the glass. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "This isn't what you wanted." "It's not what you wanted either," I replied, stepping closer. "So why do I feel like you're hiding something?" He turned, his eyes locking onto mine. For a moment, I thought he'd speak, spill whatever secret was buried in that guarded gaze. But he just shook his head. "We should sleep. Tomorrow's a new day." I nodded, but as I lay in the too-big bed, Caleb on the couch across the room, I couldn't shake the feeling that this marriage, forced and fragile, was about to change everything. The next morning, we moved into a small apartment the Warrens had gifted us, a temporary fix to keep up appearances. It was a quaint place in Syracuse, with creaky floors and windows that let in too much light. Caleb and I tiptoed around each other, polite strangers bound by a vow neither of us chose. But there were moments, his hand brushing mine as we unpacked, the way he hummed softly while making coffee, that made my chest ache with something I couldn't name. One evening, as rain pounded the roof, I found an old photo album in a box of Elliot's things, left behind in his haste. It was filled with pictures of us, Elliot and me, laughing at a fair, Caleb in the background, his eyes always on me. I froze, the realization hitting hard. Caleb had been there, always there, watching from the edges. "Caleb," I called, my voice shaky. He appeared in the doorway, his expression wary. I held up the album. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" He looked away, his hands shoving into his pockets. What was I supposed to say? "Ethan." He stopped, his breath hitching. "It doesn't matter now." But it did. It mattered more than I could admit. The rain didn't stop for days, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. Caleb's unfinished confession hung in the air, a ghost I couldn't exorcise. Every glance, every accidental touch as we navigated our cramped apartment, felt like a spark threatening to ignite something dangerous. I tried to focus on normalcy. I went to work at the bookstore downtown, shelving novels while customers asked about love stories, oblivious to the one unraveling in my life. Caleb took a job at a local cafe, his art degree gathering dust as he frothed lattes and dodged questions about our newlywed bliss. At home, We were actors in a play no one else could see, performing domesticity for the sake of the Warrens' reputation. But the cracks were showing. One night, I came home to find Caleb sketching at the kitchen table, his pencil moving furiously over a sketch pad. The drawing was of Mimi profile, my eyes soft with a sadness I hadn't realized he'd noticed. I stood frozen, the intimacy of it stealing my breath. "You're good," I said, my voice too loud in the quiet room. He startled, slamming the sketchpad shut. "It's nothing," he muttered, but his cheeks flushed, betraying him. "It's not nothing," I pressed, sitting across from him. "You see me, Caleb. You always have." He looked up, his eyes raw with something I couldn't decipher. "You were Elliot's," he said. The words clipped. I didn't have the right. The mention of Elliot stung, but it was the pain in Caleb's voice that cut deeper. I reached for his hand, my fingers brushing his knuckles. He didn't pull away, but his breath hitched. And for a moment, the world narrowed to just us. "Then why did you agree to this marriage?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "If you felt something." He laughed, a bitter sound. "Because I'm an idiot. Because I thought maybe, just maybe, I could be enough for you." The confession landed like a stone in my chest. I wanted to say something, anything, but my mind was a tangle of guilt and longing. Elliot had been my sun, bright and all-consuming, but Caleb was the moon quiet, steady, always there in the dark, and I'd been too blind to see it. The next week, the Warrens invited us to a family dinner, a test to see if we could keep up the charade. The dining room was a battlefield of crystal glasses and forced smiles. Mrs. Warren grilled us on our plans, while Mr. Warren watched Caleb like a hawk, as if daring him to slip. I played my part, laughing too loudly, holding Caleb's hand under the table. But his grip was tense, his thumb brushing my palm in a way that felt too real. After dinner, we escaped to the backyard. The cool night air a relief from the suffocating tension. Caleb leaned against a tree, his face half lit by the moonlight. "I hate this," he said, his voice breaking. "Pretending with you. It's killing me." "Then don't pretend," I said, stepping closer. My heart was racing, but I couldn't stop. "What do you want, Caleb? Really?" He looked at me, his eyes searching mine. "You," he said simply, and the words shattered something inside me. Before I could think, I closed the distance between us, my lips finding his. This kiss was nothing like the one at the altar, desperate, hungry, full of everything we'd been too afraid to say. His hands gripped my shirt, pulling me closer, and for a moment, the world made sense. But reality crashed back. The back door opened, and Elliot's voice cut through the night. "Ethan." We sprang apart, my heart hammering. Elliot stood there, his face a mix of shock and betrayal. He looked older, tired, but still the man I'd once loved. "What the hell is this?" he demanded. Caleb stepped forward, his voice steady despite the tremble in his hands. "You left him, Elliot. You don't get to judge." Elliot's eyes darted between us, his anger palpable. "You're my brother," he spat. "And you're, what? Stealing my life." "Your life?" I snapped, the hurt boiling over. "You ran Elliot, you left me to pick up the pieces. He flinched, but his gaze hardened. I came back to fix things. To apologize. But I guess you've moved on. The words twisted in my gut. I looked at Caleb. His jaw clenched. His eyes pleading for me to choose. But how could I? Elliot was my past. The love I'd built my dreams around. Caleb was something new. Something I hadn't dared to dream of. I need time, I said, my voice cracking. Elliot stormed off, and Caleb turned away. His shoulders slumped. I was losing them both, and I didn't know how to stop it. Back at the apartment, the silence was deafening. Caleb slept on the couch again, and I lay awake, replaying the kiss, the fight, the mess we'd made. The next morning, I found a note on the table. I'm going to my mom's for a few days. I can't do this right now. See, panic clawed at me. I'd pushed him away, just like I'd pushed Elliot away. But this felt different. Losing Caleb felt like losing a part of myself I hadn't even known was there. Caleb was gone for 3 days, each one stretching longer than the last. The apartment felt hollow without him, his sketchpad still on the table, his coffee mug unwashed in the sink. I tried calling, but he didn't answer. I tried working, but the bookstore's quiet only amplified my thoughts. Elliot had texted, asking to meet, but I couldn't face him. Not yet. On the 4th day, I drove to the Warrens' estate, my hands shaking on the wheel. I didn't know what I'd say, but I couldn't let Caleb slip away. When I arrived, Mrs. Warren greeted me with a cold smile, but I brushed past her, searching for Caleb. I found him in the garden, sketching under an oak tree, his face drawn with exhaustion. Caleb, I said, my voice breaking the silence. He looked up, his eyes guarded but soft. Why are you here, Ethan? He asked, setting his pencil down. Because I'm an idiot, I said, echoing his words from weeks ago. Because I've been running from this, from us, when it's the only thing that feels right. He stood, his expression unreadable. And Elliot. I took a deep breath, the truth settling in my bones. Elliot was my past. He broke me. Caleb. But you're putting me back together. I don't know how, but you are. His eyes softened, but he didn't move closer. This marriage wasn't real, Ethan. It was a deal to save face. You don't owe me anything. Maybe not, I said, stepping toward him. But I want this. I want you. Not because of a vow or a family's expectations, but because I'm falling for you. The words hung between us, raw and terrifying. Caleb's breath hitched, and then he was kissing me, his hands framing my face, his lips fierce with everything we'd held back. It was a promise, a choice, a beginning. We returned to the apartment together, but the world wasn't done testing us. Elliot showed up the next week, his apology laced with desperation. I messed up, Ethan, he said, standing in our living room. I was scared, but I'm here now. We can fix this. Caleb stood beside me, his hand brushing mine. I looked at Elliot, the man I'd once thought was my forever, and felt nothing. Not anger, not love, just closure. I'm sorry, Elliot, I said, but I'm not the same person you left. I found something real, and I'm not letting it go. Elliot's face crumpled, But he nodded, leaving without another word. The door closed, and Caleb turned to me, his eyes bright with hope. "You mean that?" he asked. "Every word," I said, pulling him close. Months later, we stood in that same park from my imagined prompt, golden leaves falling around us. The marriage that started as a lie had become our truth. We weren't perfect. Caleb's sketches still littered the apartment, and I still burned toast every morning, but we were us. Two people who'd found love in the wreckage of someone else's choices. As we sat on that rustic bench, Caleb opened his sketchpad, revealing a drawing of us, hand in hand, with the words "a love we never expected" scrawled in the corner. I smiled, my heart full. Sometimes, the best stories start with an ending. Ours began with a runaway groom and a forced vow, but it was the courage to choose each other that made it a love worth fighting for.